if it's to have, well, what happens is that Congress votes on a law, and that law, in order to be implemented, goes to an agency of the government. And the agency is in charge in coming up with rules and regulations on how they intend to carry out and implement the law that Congress voted on, okay? So when it goes into this agency, they come up with rules and regulations which are printed in the Federal Register, okay? The Federal Register then prints that so that all of we the people can see, giving we the people the opportunity to say, no, I'm not going to follow this, this is wrong, we need to change this, get rid of this, you can say this, but this is not acceptable. It goes through all this stuff for like 180 days. And finally something comes out of that, which becomes known as an implementing rule and regulation. Okay? That implementing rule and regulation is then attached to the law, and that is what controls the law. Okay? If it has an implementing regulation that's pertinent to you and I, that has general applicability to you and I, then that's what it says. Okay? Without the attached rules and regulations, it doesn't apply to you and I. Okay? So that's how you tell. And it takes you through this whole thing when you look in the federal law. It's Title 44 of the U.S. Code, Section 1501. Its CEQA meaning is just 1501, 1502, and so forth. And it talks about this, and it explains exactly what I just said. Okay? And then what you do is you have to look in the Code of Federal Regulations, index and finding aids, because that matches the regulations up with the laws. Okay? Now, if the law doesn't have a corresponding implementing regulation, then guess what? It's applicable only to the federal government, agencies, and employees thereof. And it's not applicable to the Union of States, which would be you and I. Does that kind of make sense? I know we're just rushing through this at the end. I don't need to, I don't have one of those right now. Oops, okay. So anyway, that's the way it is. But here's the thing, is that implementing rules and regulations can be applied to specific groups of the general population. Let me ask a question. You've all heard of the minimum wage, right? And every 7 or 8 years, Congress goes through this big battle. Well, we need to raise the minimum wage. Well, no, we don't need to. Yeah, we do. And they go back and forth, back and forth. And they come out and they say, okay, here's the new minimum wage. We're all aware of that, right? So who does that minimum wage apply to? Any idea? Just say something.
Hourly.
Entry-level hourly people. What kind of entry-level hourly people? Where? Everywhere. Okay, so we get answer of everywhere. Everywhere meaning in the United States. Okay. Well, I'm going to suggest no. It's only applicable to the federal government employees. That's their minimum wage entry level. Federal government employees. When the federal government does that, that's all it applies to. Because guess what? The state of Georgia has its own minimum wage, and the state of Mississippi has its own minimum wage. New York has its own minimum wage. All the states have their own minimum wage applicable to state government employees. Okay? Counties can have their own individual minimum wage. All these different organizations, I can have my own minimum wage. You know, if you wanted a job with me and I says, I will be glad to hire you and I'm going to pay you $1 an hour. Okay? I probably wouldn't get the caliber of individual that I want to get for $1 an hour, but the point is that if you agreed to work for me for $1 an hour, there's nothing anybody could say. Now, you can't go out and say, oh, well, he made advantage of me. I wasn't aware that the minimum wage was this, and I should be paying this, so therefore get all this back pay. No, it doesn't matter, because they have the people you talk to have no applicability over me or no authority over me. Okay? Get a mouthful of stuff. So specifically then, how do we address this? So what happens is when the same thing, we want to put an affidavit, but this is where we spell it. And this is what I did for the state of Arkansas when they had no remedy, okay? I spelled this information out for them. And bottom line was that if the law is unconstitutional, the only way you have to have a remedy, and if there is no remedy, then it has to apply to a specific group of people. And that specific group of people would, in Arkansas state, be employees of the state of Arkansas through nature of their contract. Okay? And so we're not, the mom and dad, they weren't employees of the state of Arkansas, so therefore this does not apply to them. We are a specific group. So as long as you go and say, you know, the facts of the thing, and you say this is how it would apply, we're not members of the group that it applies to. It's an unconstitutional law, yes, but it's legal because it applies to this group. So that's how you get out of it. Now, is there going to be a lot bigger battle with doing something like that in those states? Well, yeah, but you can do it. It just depends on how convicted you are to following your path. So.
I think that's the whole issue, is that you got in a situation where you were convicted, but you know, we live in such a fast pace, and I'm just sitting at these young people and thinking what they have to go through, you know, and our daughter doesn't vaccinate, but are you willing to stage the fight? You know, do you want to take the time?
Right.
And of course it's important to people that believe, right? But for the average Joe Blow out there who just is trying to, you know, ends meet and everybody's working and they're in a rush, they don't. They'll just sign it. They'll just get it over with. All right, you know, whatever they have to do.
They don't prioritize what others prioritize.
Right.
Health and wellness.
True. There's a very few, though, that at the top of the list.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So that's how they get us. That's how they get us.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you all for coming. Hopefully you've learned some things. Hopefully I've opened your eyes. I know once we get into the legal stuff, it just kind of gets like a little overwhelming. It's a little bit more fun talking about how the body works and functions and so forth. But anyway, please know that help is always available. All you have to do is ask, and you know, we can help direct you, or in anything we need to do. We can even write letters for you. I've done that.
Is this successful in Cherokee County?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Now that doesn't mean, since they've come out with the new law, that they might not give you a hassle with that, and
But that's when he has
and they're going to come back and say, oh, well, yeah, you can. They'll give you this and say, well, just sign this. It says the same thing.
No, don't sign it and then ask for the letter.
Yeah, don't sign it. Just say, well, you can look at it and say, well, it doesn't look to me that it says the same thing. So let me think about it. And while I'm thinking about it, you hold on to that. Keep that in the records. Well, I can't accept this. Well, you don't have a choice right now. Your job is to collect the information, so just take it up with your supervisor. You know, or you could even say, are you threatening me? I mean, if you want to get a little controversial in their face. But no, I would just be very calm and gracious and say, well, you know, I'm confused about this. You know, to me, they say two entirely different things. This is the actual code, and if you have questions about it, please take it up with your supervisor. Until then, I'll assume that this is right. And the other thing, they'll say, well, you have to do this. And you think because they tell you have to do that, that you have to do it. So if they tell you, well, no, you have to do this, say, okay, I'll tell you what, any problems you have with this, put it in writing to me so I know exactly what you're requesting me to do so I can be compliant. Because once they start putting it in writing, that's the death knell for them. But if they start telling you things, kind of threatening you things or whatever, then and you just cave in. If you did that, that's when you start having problems. So you're welcome. Thank you.